Hi, Amy. We'll get started in just a minute. I was waiting to see if Glenn could log in.
Okay, no problem. I'm sorry I'm late.
No, you're good. Thank you. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and just call the meeting to order. Glenn, um, I sent him the information, so he should hopefully be on soon. But we'll go ahead and call the meeting 5:38. I have Crystal Carr absent and Michael Quintana absent, and the rest of the HAB members are present. We don't have any public comment, but we do have Nate. Nate, you'll have to remind me how you pronounce your last name. Nassif, easy. Nat? Nate, sorry. Nathan. It's like that same with who I was saying. All right. Nathan, Nate. Attended our housing advisory meeting last month and submitted his application, and I followed with a recommendation, and he'll get approved by the council next Tuesday, or go in front of the council, which I don't believe that there would be a nay. It will be a support. It's just the process. So Nate is here at the table, observing, listening, won't be voting, and just wanted to share that. So minutes, we're still behind on those, correct? Okay.
Yeah, for the Fred Rolandhagen for the record, we should have the minute. Apologize. We should have the minutes next month. We have somebody in the office who's working on them, and we'll have to get those in the agenda packet for next month.
Sounds excellent. Okay. So moving on to new business, we have election of officers. So this comes around every January, where we're looking for a chair, a vice chair, and we don't necessarily have or need like a secretary that takes minutes, because we have that. I was just going to throw out there, and it might not happen at this meeting, but if someone would have the willingness to be a secretary, that would just be somebody that could collect, people send me things and I lose them, and we don't get them in the packet. So that's what I'm sort of thinking. And I might just sort of leave it open, and maybe we can come back and talk about it next month. But that's what I'm hoping, is that if somebody could serve in that role, and maybe we share it in some way, like change it halfway through the year. Somebody does it for 6 months and someone else does it for 6 months, but just a way to sort of keep track of documents. I don't know what people think about that. And why I'm saying that is, oh yes, Amy.
Sorry, audio button. We've often talked about, and I know there's been some staff changes, but we've often talked about somewhere to hold documents legally that's not impacting the sunshine law or wouldn't be like off in some, Gmail account. But I don't know, Zach, if you know of a place that we could just like hold documents or something, that would be kind of helpful. We've talked about this for
Long time.
2 staffers ago.
Yes, thank you, Amy.
Yeah, I think it probably depends on what the documents are. Um, I remember we had discussed that last year at some point, and that was when Ethan was still with us, and we were gonna check and see if that was gonna be okay legally, because because this is a public, with this being a public board, anything that's produced by the board is open to needs to be available to the public. If it's considered work product, that might have a different identification. And so that's something that we can clarify with our legal counsel and then get back to the board on. But a lot of times work product doesn't have to be available to the public, whereas your finished product or the products that go through the board officially do have to be available. And we can keep that information on the city's drives. But what I'm hearing is are you looking for a drive or a place where the HAB members can access documents? Is that what we're looking for?
Yeah, and like land documents too. So instead of like people will email me things and I'll just, you know, things happen. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, that's right. Crystal emailed me something and I forgot about it. So if there was somewhere that they could just put them.
Okay.
And then we could either, when we're doing the agenda, then I'm like, oh, we'll pull that from there, or I don't know. Aaliyah?
And maybe there's 2 different strategies to explore. I think, best case scenario would be we have a drive that we all can access and we could actually actively develop documents together. But I understand that might be challenging. That might be more challenging from the Sunshine Law Act. So, that'd be one thing to explore. Is there a way for us to collaborate on documents? But then if that does pose to be too challenging, even if there was a drive that we could access that maybe even was just shared with all the public, that was just resources, like just a place for us to access all those documents that you said, working products would have to be developed separately from that. They could go on that drive once they're complete. But I think even having that, and that is what we used to have with a Google Drive, where we did have that place to store different documents and resources that we could all access.
Okay, we'll take a look at that and we'll get an answer by next month.
All right. So then we can probably table the like secretary conversation, but that's just something I was thinking about, a way to like be able to like organize and collect materials. And if there was a non-human that could serve in that role, that would be awesome. So welcome, Glenn. We're just on new business. We were starting to talk about election of officers and got a little sidetracked. So anyhow, I talked to Aaliyah, and if there are no other, nominations, I'm happy to continue in the role of chair, and Aaliyah is happy to continue in the role of vice chair. If people have other nominations, please speak up. Otherwise, we need some, what do you call it? Motions. Motion to nominate. Thank you. Amy.
I would like to make a motion to nominate Allison as chair, presume or continue her role as chair and Aaliyah to be vice chair.
I need a second.
I'll second that.
Thanks, Glenn. All right, all in favor, raise and say aye.
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 Awesome. All right, approved. We will continue in our roles as we are now. So thank you. All right, next item. It was just following up on some of the conversation that we had last month. I wasn't sure if anyone had any action items related to some of the tasks. I have something here from Crystal Carr. What did she say? She just said that Aaron McNabb with DOLA is happy to come and present at our March meeting. She's continuing to reach out to, I think it's El Paso County, like the El Paso County, like commission, I think. And she said Commonwealth, and I can't remember what that was. So those were her updates. Since I don't have like my notes here, can anyone remember, was there anything else that we had wanted to follow up on? Yes, Aaliyah.
Well, my action item was to identify contractors or other organizations to advertise the energy efficiency program through, and that is ongoing. I have not been able to make much progress this month, but started a list of some individuals to reach out to, and so I will continue working on that.
Thank you. Thank you. Was there anyone else that I had assigned and we needed an update? I think, Rebecca, we had talked, but it was more for March, right? The March Pikes Peak Bulletin article.
Yes, ma'am. And I didn't know if you wanted to talk about that in the January article section or right now, but whatever ideas you want to throw at me, I was thinking of interviewing a few different people, like maybe a renter, someone who's been here a while. I know a couple people who live on housing vouchers here. Things like that, and just kind of going from there. I just kind of wanted everyone's input to see if that was acceptable or how that would need to be framed, maybe.
Yeah, and that's good because we need to turn in the articles. Like it would be like in this week, like I turned the one in, we'll get to that later in the agenda, but we would have to turn it in before, well, I guess that's March. So we still have next month to think about it because we're on the I did confirm with the bulletin, we're going to stick to the every other month submission due the second week of every month. And we just needed I think what Amy did last time is she sort of had, you were doing, like quarterly, you did have sort of a list, so you sort of knew what to be working on, but we're taking responsibility away from Amy, and Rebecca agreed to do March. So we just need to think about, is there a topic that everyone agrees? And Rebecca had mentioned like interviewing people.
When is the exact deadline for this? Is it second week of February or?
March.
March.
So you have time. So it wouldn't be until it's like the Tuesday before our HAB meeting, I think, because that's what it was this.
So
recent.
she would have me, so I think the publication goes to print on Friday and then it it shows up on Monday. So you have to have it done by Friday, the second Friday of the month, and then it goes to print on that Monday. But I was just gonna say, with incorporating an interview, if you want to go ahead, I think that's a wonderful idea. Somebody on a housing voucher or a couple perspectives. But if you're doing interviews, it kind of takes a little bit longer to get those people, schedules, have a sit down and then go back and write. So I say go for it.
Would the other members of the board like to review this before I just send it?
Yeah, I think if we'll have more time to talk about it, but I do think, like Amy said, it's going to take you a while. So we'll go ahead and support it so that you can get it started. And then, yeah, I would have you send it, to me, or if I'm not available, Aaliyah, just before we send it. And the editor, I mean, she probably wasn't used to that with Amy, but like she had to, she added a few little edits to mine. There were some clarity things, but that's fine. And so, Aaliyah.
And I'll just second what Amy said. I think it's a great idea to interview people. Going to have that personal touch in an article. I think it's a great next one to do.
Right. And then I had just sent some information, and Zachary, I don't know if I didn't see it in the packet. So maybe did you get all of those things? I had sent links with like the LIHTC and the affordable housing.
I don't recall any links. I know I do have a few uploads.
Or they were like printed with like links in them. There was like an affordable housing, like a presentation. There was some definitions for LIHTC and it bounced back to me, but then I thought you had received it. So I will make sure you have all of those so that they're uploaded for public in the packet.
Okay.
So what I had sent to everyone was just some, like, since I knew that we had the agenda item 3 about the LIHTC, I wanted to send some information so everyone knew what that sort of meant, and some different articles and presentations that I found related to like affordable housing. Because again, I think that's something we do need to focus on, is like our HAB definitions and figure out how we want to, like, I see them, like the city of Colorado Springs has them, and other communities I'll find have them. And if we can be clear, because even when I was writing that article, like I was like, is this a capital A affordable, or is this lowercase affordable? Is this attainable? But what's attainable? How about adequate? So there's a lot of like letter A words around housing that I think we as a HAB need to get a common definition of what we want to lean with, and that could be an agenda item for, next month, is to really be thinking about, again, how people use them. Does that make sense? So I sent what I could find, some of those things around, what was that? That presentation I sent you about affordable housing, and just some things to think about as we're working on these goals. So yes, Amy.
I was just gonna say that if you, like, just a little secret, I'm revealing my tricks, but I do have a professional subscription to Grammarly. So once I write an article, I put it in there, and it helps me with clarity and stuff that you're talking about. I should have done that for you, Allison. I'm so sorry I wasn't thinking about it. But if you want to run it by me, Rebecca, I'm happy to run it through my little machine and give you some feedback. But that's kind of that's my secret.
Amy, that would be awesome. And
Thank you.
yeah, Aaliyah was my Grammarly. So she before I got it to, the editor, Aaliyah Leah checked it for me too, so, but that's awesome. Thank you for doing that. So yeah, that'd be great, Rebecca, if you just want to, we can sort of stay in touch. We can check in next month, see how you're doing, and then Amy can do a good review. So awesome. All right, so I guess no other necessarily that I can think of follow-up items for agenda 2 that anyone can remember? Okay. All right, I guess we're on to the item 3, LaFun, low income housing tax credit letter of support.
Yeah, thank you. Let's see, Zach, can you pull up the letter? So we put so we'll pull up the letter or the draft letter or a sample letter. So everybody can take a look at it, but it's in the packet that's online with the agenda and everything. First of all, I apologize. We did not email out the agenda to everybody for this month, so we will do better next month. But John Block is available to explain what the request is, but essentially the developers, potential developers for the LaFun site are looking at applying for a LIHTC project, and one of the things that they need in their application is a letter of support. And so this is a potential letter of support. And John, if you're available, do you want to kind of explain what you're requesting and what you're asking of the Housing Advisory Board?
Yeah, happy to give you a summary, and I think maybe giving you a little bit of an update as well, following our meeting a couple months ago. So yeah, just for the record, yeah, John Block, I'm the development manager with Paragon for this site 123 Manitou, the LaFun Motel, and I'm based in Lakewood, Colorado. So yeah, I know we spoke a few months ago, and thanks again for writing that letter of support to Planning Commission. So the update there, unfortunately, that we had a long discussion with Planning Commission, and after they originally approved the concept plan, and almost every person seemingly liking the project, they did not approve the variance request with a 4-3 vote, not in our favor. So they claimed that the variance language needed to be updated, and based on their interpretation of that language, it wasn't allowed. We read it slightly differently, but nevertheless, we thought that rather than appeal that decision to council, we would rather work with the city to update the zoning language and increase the density, which I think in the long run is going to be better. And it's just a little bit more collaborative, which I think they appreciate. So unfortunately, we're back to the drawing board. We presented this issue about the density and the zoning to Planning Commission and to City Council during non-agenda items earlier this month. And I believe Planning Commission, Fred can probably confirm, based on their discussion and after our presentation, they voted in that meeting to take some potential zoning changes to City Council, with density being one of those 3 changes. So I think, it'll still take them time. They have to do an analysis. They have to formulate an opinion. It has to be approved by City Council for staff to be directed to work on that. So fingers crossed, they can figure out something quickly here. But until then, market rate is just not going to work. But now we basically have 2 options. One of which is what we're going to talk about today with the LIHTC. The other is still commercial and retail that's in play. But on the LIHTC side, as we mentioned to you, it would probably be a miracle to pull this off. We spoke with 4 different LIHTC developers in the process, and the best fit in our mind is TWG Development. They have pretty extensive experience in Colorado. The problem, though, is right now there's about a $2 million gap in funding, and that assumes that we get the 9% funding from CHAFA. So there's various ways you can fill that gap, both from the county and from other various state programs and grants, but it's not going to be easy. So if we apply under the 9% deal in February, which is what our plan is right now, and if we get it, we got to figure out how we're going to fill that gap. Thankfully, TWG does like the site, and would like to be in Manitou. Manitou has not had any recent applications, so they're willing to partner with us on the application and give it a shot. But to be clear, we had been talking about a 78 unit attainable project when we spoke to you guys last time. This would be a 43 unit, which is the maximum allowed by right. They can't apply for anything more than that if the zoning doesn't allow that. So an amendment to the zoning code that Planning Commission is considering would definitely help future light tech applications, just generally speaking. But as part of the application, we need to try and garner as much support from the community, and that includes, you know, non-for-profits, local businesses, even local citizens, and, you know, government-related entities like the Housing Advisory Board. So we put this draft letter together for you guys. You'll probably recognize a lot of the language. I actually recycled some of what you put together for the Planning Commission letter, but we would absolutely appreciate if you guys wrote a similar letter of support trying to get this light tech approved by CHAFA. Again, I don't want to get your hopes up too much, but we're going to do our best to try and fill this sizable gap. Happy to answer any questions about the process. And at some point, I think it may be helpful to have TWG come in and talk to you guys and answer some of your questions around light tech, and how to best position yourselves. But again, happy to answer any questions in the meantime.
Sure. Yeah, thank you for that summary, John. So I just want to make sure I'm clear. So the 43 units is reducing the density so that it falls within the current zoning allowance. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, they would like to do more as part of a 9% application, but they had to reduce it to that 43 units, which is what is allowed by right. So it does increase the gap even further, and that's what the 2 million number is at 43 units. It would likely be similar layout though to two duplicate buildings in the locations that we had talked about last time for the attainable project.
So thanks for that clarification. Would there be an opportunity if, you know, if there were a change to the zoning code? And I mean, I guess I'm looking at the planners in terms of timing. I would assume that's probably at least a year for that to move through. You know, I'm just wondering if there's any opportunity to be able to increase the density through a light tech program if there were a change to our zoning code, or is just those schedules too out of line?
No, unfortunately, for this cycle, you know, there's a whole lot of things that need to go into the application. One, we had to identify how many units in our initial letter of intent, which had to be submitted in December. And two, there's, you know, we have to put plans together. So I think it wouldn't work for this application cycle, but we would absolutely support, you know, a higher density over the course of this year. And then for next year's cycle, they only do applications once a year. We would do a higher density, assuming that an amendment gets passed.
So that could still fold into your development plan, right? That you.
No. If we get approved, it would just be 43 units. But if for some reason we're denied and we apply again, then we could do more units. Yeah.
Yeah, I can provide an update on what happened on what happened at the Planning Commission meeting. Actually, it was just last week. So the Planning Commission, they did have a working session to talk about potential revisions to the code. If you look at the municipal code in section 2, it says that only the city council can direct changes to the code. And so the Planning Commission resolved to basically send a letter to City Council asking City Council to direct staff and the Planning Commission to consider changes or revisions, look at revisions to the variance section, to criteria for granting a variance, revisit the densities in the respective zoning districts, and also to look at the requirements that the recent legislation had required of local communities, legislation that was passed by the state legislature last year, about accessory dwelling units, and about 3 or 4 other items. And so so that letter is being sent to City Council, and the Planning Commission also requested that City Council hold a working session about that. If City Council is in agreement with that, they would then theoretically direct staff and Planning Commission to look at those, do research, go through that public process in considering revisions, and then the Planning Commission would make a recommendation to City Council on particular changes to those items. So, yeah, that could be drawn out, that could take a while depending on depending on what we find when we get into the weeds. Probably, I mean, I have not gone through a round of revisions to the code here with the city of Manitou Springs, but something like this, I would expect, a couple working sessions with Planning Commission, a couple public hearings with Planning Commission, and then a couple, then at least the first and second reading with City Council. So you're talking probably minimum of 6 months, probably upwards of a year to see all of this finally approved at the end. And of course, we don't know what would be approved at the end. It may achieve the goals that the developer is looking for this property, or it may not achieve the goals. We don't know yet.
And Fred, could you comment on the Planning Commission's perspective, or some of the commissioners' perspectives in their vote, that it was not within their authority to pass this type of variance?
That's first of all, I won't speak for the Planning Commission. Yeah. But some of the information that came out of the meeting, and also was actually in one of the articles that was in the newspaper, in the Pikes Peak Bulletin, this idea that they didn't feel like they had the authority to grant the variance. That's because they didn't feel like that the request identified the hardship that's necessary in order to grant a variance. And so that's why the Planning Commission wants to look at the criteria for granting a variance to see if that can be changed or something like that. So the Planning Commission notwithstanding, if you look at state statute, the state grants local communities the authority to grant variances from regulations if there is usually what they call a practical hardship or a practical difficulty in building on the property. It cannot be an economic hardship or an economic difficulty. And so I think some Planning Commission members felt that there was no hardship in the request. Let's see. So, with that line of thought, some of the planning commissioners thought, well, instead of granting the variance, let's just consider revisions to the density requirements in that zoning district. That's how you got to do it. Because there was talk about the public process that went through when when the city made the municipal code revisions a couple years ago, and they looked at those densities, and the final decision was what we see today. So if, again, there was some concern that if they didn't honor those particular densities, that would be contrary to what the public process resulted in during those code revisions a couple years ago. So I hope that makes sense.
Thank you.
But I'll stop. Yeah, I'll stop there.
I have one more question. John, can you speak a little bit more to what, I mean, you mentioned that there would be, with this plan, that currently you have a substantial funding gap. Like what type of opportunities that you may be able to look to try to fill that gap?
So there's various state grants and county grants that we're gonna apply for. I can't speak to all the specifics off the top of my head. Candidly, TWG is much more in tune with that. But that's what we'll have to bridge the difference is basically trying to find some way to capitalize it. But I mean, again, we're gonna do our best, but it is a pretty sizable number. You know, in other jurisdictions, I think we mentioned this last time, in other census tracts, you can get a bonus if the census tract falls within certain parameters. We do not fall within that proper census tract. So that's part of the reason. And then you combine that with the density issue, and yeah, it's a tall task. But again, we're gonna do our best because we, now that market rate is, as Fred just mentioned, 6 to 12 months out, best case scenario, assuming they modify some of the densities. It's really this or commercial at this point.
And what, so in terms of the changes to, changes that you have to make to the design, obviously there's the reduction in the density. Are there any other, I'm sure there's a ton of little things. Is there any other major aspects that you've identified that, yeah, we'll have to remove this or we'll have to change this to move this forward with this path?
I can't speak to all the design differences. Honestly, I haven't done like a side-by-side comparison. Studio architecture is the architect helping us. I'm happy to share the differences. I mean, structurally, right, a light tech deal will not have the amenities of even attainable project. And as we talked about last time, the attainable project had reduced amenities from a market rate. So it'll probably have smaller common areas, although they're still planning on doing some sort of community area and small little kitchenette in that area. I don't think there'll be a workout room, but if you're interested, I can put a side-by-side comparison. I think the total building will also be smaller with the less units. We'll probably have more 2 beds instead of 1 beds, etc. But if you're interested, I'm happy to follow up on that.
Thank you. Appreciate that background.
Just catching up, Mr. John. I have a question. Any 3 bedrooms or just 1 and 2 in this development?
I think they are considering 3 beds in this. I don't think there are many. I need to pull up the unit mix, and I apologize. I should have that readily available. But off the top of my head, I thought it was in the 10 to 15% range of 3 beds. Mostly 1s and 2s.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Do we need to have a motion to say we're gonna do a letter of support?
Yeah, I think that would be helpful. And yeah, you can certainly do that if you are, if the board is satisfied with the letter the way it's written, you can make a motion to make a motion to adopt the letter and send it on to Chaffa. Or if you want to make any changes, you can do that, or you can take time to consider it. If you need some more time, you can, but I think there's a timeline that we need to be mindful of.
Yeah, sorry, just to add there, if I may, the letter of support would actually be sent to us. It's addressed to Chaffa, but we submit the packet of letters of support. For context, TWG just got a deal approved last year. They had 80 letters of support. I think you guys are probably one of the most important letters of support, just given your function. But yeah, the letters of support would be sent to us, and then we'll include that as part of the application package. I should have told you that, Fred, previously.
Thank you. I mean, I would imagine that we would, all the HAB members would be in favor of this, especially since it aligns with our mission, because it is looking now at a lower income threshold, even than the attainable project that we had approved to write the letter of support. So do any HAB members have questions or concerns about the letter of support? I'm seeing nodding of no's from Amy and Glenn. No concerns. Any Aaliyah or Rebecca, any concerns about supporting it? Okay. So I just need a motion.
I motion that we vote to support this letter of support for the Light Tech application for Paragon Realty.
I will second that motion.
All right, motion seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Amazing. All right, it approved. All right, John, we'll what do we want to do next?
Yeah, we'll take it. We'll tweak it. It looks like we need to make a couple specific changes at the bottom, but we can get it out and get you to sign it.
Okay,
Chair, for on behalf of the HAB, and then we'll send it back to John.
sounds good.
Thank
Yes.
you.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, John. I just wanted to, add something to the end of this that that I really support working with the Planning Commission, the City Council, and the Planning Department to help change our zoning code. I mean, I totally agree that that is a much better way to move forward than having variances. And we've, as a board, we've advocated for this in the past and it has not moved forward. And if there's an opportunity now for us to help support this, I don't want to speak for all of our members, but I really personally support helping in whatever way that we can to help move that forward.
Agree. Thank you. All right. Awesome. Thanks, John, for your time. You're welcome to leave, or you can hear about our next topic, which is sort of related to this.
Okay, well, maybe I'll hang on, and if it veers off, then maybe I'll jump, but thank you
All
all.
right, here, the basics. So our next item is the Pikes Peak Bulletin article submission that got changed. So we had originally planned to just do a repost of the energy efficiency article that Amy had written, just to sort of start out for the new year. And then in the Pikes Peak Bulletin on the 9th of January, the article came out that said Manitou housing development blocked by exclusionary zoning. And in the article, it mentioned my name in regards to HAB's letter of support for the Peregrine project, but it didn't didn't mention any, it didn't go into sort of the details of the the thing, it just said, in an October 16th letter included with Peregrine's variance request, Allison Gerbig, chair of HAB, expressed support. And then it read sort of just a basic paragraph of looking at the east corridor and the support. And then it went on and, you know, had some other person speaking. So anyway, so I told the, or asked the editor if I could change, because I had already submitted that. And then reached out to Aaliyah. So I had just written a new article post related to this, kind of a follow-up to this January 9th, re-explaining our letter of support. So I was just, I think you all should have received a copy, or it's in the packet. And basically it was just speaking about like the lens that we, you know, thought about before we wrote the letter of support. And it was, a lot of it was thinking about the location in the URA, and it's, you know, the project would fit well. And that even though it wasn't affordable, we felt like it was a great opportunity. And then I had done some research just by walking our city because primarily I noticed multifamily apartments sort of sit like, you know, what would that be? Here's Manitou Avenue. Is that considered north? Like El Paso Boulevard is parallel, right? That's like the URA is Manitou Avenue, and then one block over is El Paso. And there are quite a few family. That's mostly where the multifamily apartments are. There is a couple different ones. And I wrote down all the addresses, and then I looked on the El Paso County assessors, and the newest project that Manitou has ever had was 53 years, 50, what did I say? 53, 1971. So that's our newest, or 1973 was the newest project, which is the Fountain Creek apartment. So we haven't had a multifamily project. So I wanted to highlight that. And we added the piece again that if the code doesn't get changed around density, we probably won't have another project like that. So that will be the article that was submitted, and where the editor changed it is she just was sort of like referencing back to this January 9th article to explain why I'm writing this. So anyway, it was basically, John, it was just basically a follow-up and another sort of emphasis on the support of this project, whether it's attainable or market rate or whatever. It would allow, again, a new safe quality build that Manitou hasn't had since 1973. So that's it. Did anyone have a question about that?
Thank you for doing that, Allison and Amy.
Thank you,
and
Aaliyah,
Leah.
too, for helping me. So, yeah, that was that. And then I guess the last item is Plan Manitou 2.0 update.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. So I've got a little presentation that I can show you, kind of give you a project status update and show you some things that have been presented to Planning Commission and City Council over perhaps the last 6 months. But we did a pretty robust public engagement process over the summertime, and then the last several months, our consultants have been preparing the update. They've been updating the plan and preparing a draft for review. City staff was able to review it in December, and the draft plan was made available to the public right before the holidays. It is out on the website, along with a link along with a link to another survey for the public, for anybody to take a survey about what they think about the draft. the public engagement that's happening this month, it's actually happening next week. On Wednesday, we're going to have a public meeting where essentially the draft is going to be discussed, talk about what's been revised, what's been changed, take public comment, and we're going to have some booths and things like that where people can prepare comments if they would like. After that, I've got scheduled a joint working session with Planning Commission and City Council on February 12th, Wednesday, February 12th, where they're going to take a look at the draft. If they have any questions, comments, any heartburn about it, that's their opportunity to say so. And our consultants would go back and make any revisions after hearing from the public and the Planning Commission and City Council, with the idea of taking it to the Planning Commission in a public hearing in March or April, and then public hearing to City Council either in April or May for final approval or final adoption. So what I'm going to do, I've got a little presentation to talk about that. Let me share my screen.
Could you send out, you said it's on, I was just looking on the website and I'm sure I just can't find it. Maybe, would it be possible if after this you send a link out to the draft strategic plan?
Yeah, absolutely.
awesome. Thanks.
Plan Manitou has its own webpage, and I'll just send that page out. It has all of the information for you. I will send that out today or tomorrow morning, if that's okay. Okay, we got our status update. Here's the presentation. Trying to find, there it is. Slideshow. Okay, so I'll just go from here. So this was the project status update a number of months ago that we presented to the planning commission and city council. That was during the fall time. In August, September timeframe, and that's when we did this. This is the project timeline. Phase 1, the technical updates and the plan assessment was earlier last year. Basically went from January through June. We did our public engagement process in the summertime. So June, July, and August was our public engagement. Phase 2, basically identifying those what we call strategic priorities or strategic implementation priorities, was done during the summertime. We presented them to the designated working groups and City Council and Planning Commission in the fall. And then our consultants prepared a draft and final plan at the end of 2025. We are right now, we're on track with presenting that draft and holding another round of public engagement in January and then February, with the idea of having doing adoption hearings, hopefully in March and April. But like I said, it could be April and May. So part of there were a couple of things that we did. Number one, our consultants did what they called a plan assessment. They assessed the current Plan Manitou comp plan to basically identify, okay, how are we doing? What's the status? What have we accomplished? What have we not accomplished? Because there were a lot of goals, there were a lot of priorities and things that were in the plan. Let's see. So some of the key takeaways of that plan assessment was a lot of progress has been made. There has been a certain amount of criticism by the public that the city is not following the plan, that there's not progress being made. But if you look at the implementation, if you look at the goals that are in the plan, and you compare that with the work programs that the city have done over the has done over the last 5 to 7 years, quite a bit has actually been done, and quite a few of the goals have been furthered. There were some ambitious efforts that ran into practical limitations. There were some things that were just bumped up against politics that weren't able to move forward. Progress and metric tracking was somewhat difficult due to staff turnover and data points, or many data points. But what we identified was that the vision statements, the goals, and the policies, the overall policies in the current plan are still relevant, and that was based on what we've heard from the public. It is a bit difficult for the community and staff and for us to prioritize those goals and policies, and so that's kind of the purpose of this plan of this revision, is to try to prioritize all of the goals and policies that are in the plan. So with that said, we also did our consultants completed a community profile and story map, and all of this is online, and I'll give you that link and you can take a look at all of this online. The community, if you are a mapping geek or nerd, you're going to love the community profile, because it has lots of different maps that you can overlay over each other, identify, housing areas, you can identify natural hazard areas, things like that. So that is available online. So under that community profile that was done, here are some of the key takeaways that we identified. And I think most of these are no-brainers. I think we're pretty familiar with this. Number one, the Manitou Springs community is getting older. About 17% of our residents are 65 and older, and that's gone up from 2010. That's gone up 4% since 2010. The population, the actual population, is actually going down. We went down in population about 3% since 2000. So that was a span of about 20 years from the 2000 census to the 2020 census. We all know that opportunity for growth is limited. We're limited in where we can grow, and we're limited in the land that we have to grow. One thing that the community profile did identify was that revenue, sales tax revenue, property tax revenue is up. It is uncertain. Sales tax revenue, there was a bit of a decline in sales tax revenue in 2023 from the previous year. And there are some potential changes to access to cannabis in neighboring communities, primarily the city of Colorado Springs, that could have an effect on the sales tax that we will collect in the future. So it's kind of a wait and see type of thing. We're assessing that, but that's what the community profile has identified. So I'll give you just real briefly on what we heard from the public during the public engagement process. So as a summary, these are the things that we did over the summertime. We had a Plan Manitou 101, or question of the week, that was online. There were four questions that we threw out, as well as a final question of the month. And we had 218 responses from the questions of the week. We had 61 responses from the question of the month. We had a couple pop-up events. We were at the Ice Cream Social on July 1st. We also had a booth at the Day of Friendship on July 27th. As I said, we engaged in our working groups. We have working groups that were appointed by the city council that focused on specific topic areas like housing, or transportation, or natural hazards, things like that. And then we also had what we call a community priorities workshop, which was a public meeting where we invited anybody who wanted to come in and look at the community priorities and basically tell us, what do you think should be the community's, the city's priorities moving forward? So we got a lot of feedback, and I'll just do this one. This is the feedback that we got specifically. We had a question of the week about specifically about housing, neighborhoods, land use, and the built environment. And so that question was, this is the question that we posed. What types of housing, land uses, or amenities do you think the city needs? So affordable and diverse housing was identified as something that the community thought that we needed. They also thought that open space preservation and natural areas was important or is important. That there's a need for community amenities such as a grocery store, rec centers, public restrooms. And there's also a desire to manage growth to maintain the current feel, the current character, the current small town feel. And so when you look at this is more of the responses of what we saw for housing neighborhoods and land use. So you'll see down here at the bottom, we got the most response for improving efforts to create and maintain defensible space and reduce wildfire risk and homeowners insurance rates. That seemed to be the biggest one. And then the second highest one was enforce regulations to improve safety and quality of rental housing. I think that goes back to the habitability code that the city adopted, I think recently. And if I remember right, the board, the Housing Advisory Board had a part to play in that. Let's see. So let's see, under question of the month. So this was a general question of the month, the community priorities. So we asked people to put these topics in priority. And so from that particular survey, natural environment and sustainability and transportation, infrastructure and mobility were of the highest priority. And about the same, although transportation was a little bit less, and then housing, neighborhoods, land use, and the built environment came in at third place with the others. So that this kind of gives you an idea of what the public survey identified, or what at least the members of the community who took the survey felt should be a priority. After that, we did get some input from city departments. The consultants had a meeting with city departments to identify what city departments' priorities were, and what they thought of the public input. There expressed a great need to focus on catching up before pursuing additional strategies. There are a lot of projects that the city is currently doing, and there can be sometimes a sense of being overwhelmed with so many projects for a city the size of Manitou. And so the city departments and department heads felt that there was a need to catch up and really focus on the projects that we're currently working on before taking on too many new projects. Let's see. And so down here, that there is an identified there is a thought that the plan update needs to establish some realistic expectations about what can be accomplished over the next 1 to 3 years with our current staffing and financial resources. So that's something that needs to be considered with this comprehensive plan revision. this was something that was presented to City Council and the Planning Commission. How do we compare with our general fund revenue per capita? And they, our consultants compared us with a few other communities of fairly similar size, as well as other communities that are close to us. So there's some communities like, mountain communities like Aspen or Crested Butte that the general fund revenue is quite a bit higher per capita. But we kind of fall in line a little bit with Pagosa Springs. But there are other communities that have much lower general fund revenue than us. One of them is City of Colorado Springs, but they're a very, very much larger community. But places like Woodland Park, Lyons, which is north of Boulder, and Salida have a lower general fund revenue per capita than we do. And so what we did was this is where we're saying we're making the sausage. We're taking all of this information and all of this stuff and identifying what these community priorities are. We are looking at, so we took the plan assessment, the community data, input from city departments, the question of the week, all of the public input, and everything like that to mash it up and identify those community priorities. And this was this was some of the questions that our consultants asked in terms of screening those priorities. Okay, how do we prioritize? And so some of the things that we thought should be pushed up to the top of the list or should be considered, is this are we currently moving forward with the priority, or is it not? Can we advance the priority or advance the goal without any new resources, like any new funding resources, or do we have to find more resources to do it? Is it a community priority, or is it a community and a city priority? What level of support does the priority have? Does the priority give us the ability to advance the goals across elements in the plan and things like that? So they took all of those things to consider. Then they provided our updated plan and identified our strategic priorities. And that's where we're at right now, and that's what you can see online. So we identified a short list of strategic priorities with the idea of that those could be accomplished within a 1 to 3 year time frame. They are aligned with available resources. In other words, we've got that we should have the staffing and financial means to complete those strategic priorities. And also it's in line with the work programs that the city departments have identified for themselves. Then after those strategic priorities, we have longer term actions that would occur 4 years and beyond. Those would have the potential to be elevated to strategic priorities if we find the resources to do them. But with that comprehensive list could also become strategic priorities in the future, like I said, depending on funding and staffing and things like that. So with that, so that's what the update focused on. There are other targeted updates that we looked at. We refreshed the introduction to reflect the plan's process and completion of other related plans. We refreshed where we are today with some minor updates to goals and policies, as well as we refreshed references related to plans and studies. But we really focused on these priorities, this priorities list. Here we had a number of appendices which we basically combined. We did a lot of combination and took some stuff out that was already in something else. So for example, the Plan Manitou document that was adopted in 2017 included a hazard mitigation strategy. We adopted a separate hazard mitigation plan in 2023. And so we were able to take that out of the Plan Manitou document because we already have a document. So things like that. So with the next steps, like I said before, staff updated the plan and the strategic priorities in October, November, and December. Public review or public draft was released in December, and we have a second round of meetings in January next week. And let's see, this is our timeline again, which is the same as before. Let's see, I was going to show you so in this list, in the short list of strategic priorities, there are two priorities related to housing. And this is what I wanted to make sure that you all knew what was in there. So we have two of them. One is to review, this should be familiar, review and update regulations pertaining to long-term lodging in hotels and motels as appropriate to provide more flexibility in conjunction with length of stay limits and compliance with applicable building and fire codes. So that's relating to looking at our regulations to see how our lodging can accommodate for long-term rental housing. We currently allow some of that for our lodging. I think we have a provision in our code that allows for a certain amount of hotel rooms to be used for long-term lodging. But this strategic priority, I think, just kind of emphasizes the desire to follow up with that and see if we need to go further. The other one, review and update the Land Use and Development Code as needed to comply with House Bill 241152, which is the ADU requirement that was passed by state legislature and other recent state legislation. And in fact, going back to that was one of the things that Planning Commission has asked City Council to direct us to consider and look at. Accessory dwelling units could provide some additional housing in a dispersed manner that might be not so visible that a large apartment complex would do. And so in many communities, are encouraging accessory dwelling units, not only for personal investment, for people to invest more in their own property, but also as a way to encourage and build more housing in a dispersed manner that's a little bit more acceptable to the built-in, or a little bit more in conformance with the current built environment. So hopefully, if the City Council agrees with Planning Commission, we'll be considering that. Let's see, there are a couple more ongoing priorities. So here are some more housing priorities that were identified in the not up front, but in the back, or not in the back, but ongoing, to continue to enforce our regulations to improve safety and quality of rental housing. That's going back to enforcing the habitability code, continuing to support the effort of the HAB as a way to advance strategic housing priorities, periodically review, and also to periodically review and update the board's strategic plan. HN 1.3 is to continue to seek opportunities to construct small footprint attainable housing. I think ADUs could fit into that. And then 1.4, identify or partner with regional housing providers that are interested in investing in Manitou Springs. And then, oh, sorry, that's not the end. So there's others. Work with PPRBD, the Regional Building Authority or Regional Building Department to enforce work completed with that has been completed without permits. This goes back to enforcing current code regulations. Improving coordination and communication about resources and tax benefits for energy efficiency improvements. And I think this is one of the goals for the board for this year. Explore opportunities to support affordable workspace housing for artists and to continue to monitor the city's short-term rental operations and update the approach as needed. That's one of the things, that was actually one of the discussion items that the Planning Commission had last week was, should we look at the short-term or the current short-term rental regulations and if they should be reviewed or revised. They decided not to put that to the city council. They wanted to focus on accessory dwelling units and some of those things that are that were authorized and required by the state legislature, and maybe take a look at our short-term rental regulations later on. So with that, just wanted to show you this online, and I'll send you this link, but we do have there is a new draft community master plan survey that you can take, and that we would encourage everybody to do, as well as the open house that's going to be next Wednesday on January 22nd, right here at 6 o'clock. So that was a little bit long-winded, but I wanted to make sure that you saw and know the priorities that are related to housing, and there's quite a few. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Fred. That was really helpful to have that whole story and summarize the priorities. Appreciate it. On those two strategic priorities, I was kind of surprised to see the long-term stays in hotels, et cetera. That hasn't been something that's been on our radar for quite a while. And so one question is just curious, like how did that float to the top as a real strategic priority?
That's a good question. I'm not exactly sure how. I was not a part of evaluating all of the comments. We got a lot of comments. And my guess is it was partly the comments that we received, and actually it might have been all of that, because I don't know where. I think this might have been a priority that was currently in the plan from when it was originally adopted in 2017. Because like I said, we already allow for some of this in the code now. I don't know when that was changed, or I don't know when that was adopted, but we allow, it's something like 20% lodging places can have basically 20% of their room rental nights be used for long-term housing. And so I don't know when that was adopted, if it was between 2017 and now, or if it's always been in the code. But it sounds like that there's still that there still might be some interest in either expanding that, or maybe reinforcing that, or something like that.
Okay, thanks. Yes, so it sounds like that's something we'll at some point probably need to look at. And then one other question is, given that the city opted in to Prop 123, I'm saying that right? Yeah, okay. Was there any discussion about whether that should be folded into the priorities at all? I mean, given that we have this commitment to try and do what we can to meet those additional housing needs within the city, if that should be something that's incorporated.
Yeah, that's a good question. So yeah, maybe the effort to move forward with Prop 123 is not in the strategic priorities right now. I think there are some priorities that can be furthered if we move forward with Prop 123. And so that might be, you might consider that as more of a tool to help with our priorities than making it a priority itself. But that's a good question. I don't, this is where I'm not too familiar with the political climate or how the city council generally feels about furthering the goals of Prop 123. And so we'll have to explore that.
So you were saying that that SP 13, the ADU thing, that's a priority that planning was going to look at. Did they're aware that we've been working on that for quite some time?
I'm not sure if they're aware of the status of what you've been doing. And that can definitely be communicated if we get that direction from city council to really hammer down on it and do something about it. I think the planning commission's thought was they're aware of this legislation was passed. And so number one, we want to make sure that we're following it and that we're not, that, the state isn't going to come down and tell us that we need to follow something that we're supposed to follow. But other than that, I didn't hear anything else specifically from the planning commission about where their desire is in doing that.
Because that would be, I mean, that's something we at least, I mean, Aaliyah and I for sure would know the history. Like we've been investigating, like researching and developing product related to accessory dwelling units since like this, the start of HAB. So we have a lot that we could offer planning without them having to do the work, perhaps.
And we actually developed draft ordinance language, which I'm sure is dusty now with and may not comply with whatever the new state mandate. But I think we have, I'll look and try to drum up those materials, but I think it's on our old Google Drive actually. So I'll see what I can find.
Yes, Amy, go for it.
Sorry, I don't know if you can see me. I guess my concern is, I was there in city council meeting when they approved Prop 123. Allison, you and I were there together. We spoke. The city approved it. And my understanding was that we made a commitment as a city, and city council voted to approve that we would commit to expanding the affordable housing by, I think it was ironically, what Mr. Block was saying was like about right there, 43 units, I want to say, or either that was new units, or we could improve on some of the historic homes or some of the houses that were becoming dilapidated or whatever. So I guess I'm just really confused how the city council would vote on that and make a commitment to the state and then not even talk to the consultants about that or have that in the strategic priorities. Because what I'm hearing you saying is just kind of like, we hope the state doesn't say anything. And to me, like this body worked very hard, and we even had a retreat to prioritize Prop 123. And the city was like, we can't work on it this year, but we promise you next. And now it feels like it's being pushed down the line. And I agree that ADUs might be a more viable solution than Prop 123, but to not even have it mentioned when we've made a commitment to the state is a bit alarming. Or even to have talked to the body that again created the ADU language is a bit alarming.
Yeah, I appreciate that comment. And definitely duly noted. Well, I'll have to see, I'll have to talk with our consultants and see what we can do, at this point. I know that was, I know so the Prop 123, when it went to city council was it in 22? Or was it in 23?
23, I think.
Okay, and I'd heard, yeah, I had heard about that. And of course, there's been quite a bit of staff turnover in the planning department since then. And so I'm sure part of it is us trying to get our feet on the ground and understand um, what's going on, and trying to keep the projects that are currently going flowing. And I think it's, I think a lot of it has to do with, again, going back to staff resources and how much time we have to further all of these projects. So,
Which
I'll
I
look in-
understand, but we were under agreement that we would not move on it and give you guys a year to, come up with city staff. But it's still, regardless, even that day, it was conveyed to city staff. I mean, to city council by staff that we cannot work on that this year, but we make a commitment that we'll do it in 2025. And so, I know you guys weren't there, and it's nothing against you, but we were there and they made the commitment. And so it's, again, it needs to be addressed.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amy, for re-elevating that. Yes, Leah.
Yeah, thank you. Well, when are comments due on the draft strategic plan, Fred?
I don't know if there's any specific due date as to when comments are due. We're taking in comments. I don't think we've identified a final date as to when we're going to take in comments. We're going to be taking in comments definitely through next week, with the open house being on the 22nd. And like I said, we're also going to there's going to be another joint working session with City Council and Planning Commission on February 12th. So, I mean, I think if anybody wants to submit comments, and there's a place to submit comments online that I'll send the link to you. But I think if you are able to submit any comments that you have by the first week of February, I think that will be suitable.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I mean, individually, we all can make comments, but it would be great if we could make some comments from the HAB. And my first thought was if we have a working session, our meeting next month, but it sounds like that's going to be too late to submit something. And I wish this wasn't, I'm sure I've missed emails, but I wish this was on our radar earlier because it wasn't on my radar.
Oh.
And so what do you think we could do, Allison, to?
Yeah, could we put together like a HAB, like letter, that would,
Yeah.
instead of us individually going in, could we put together something? I mean, we'd have to like have a, do, I guess, just a
Like an
couple of us.
impromptu meeting?
Yeah,
to
or we'd
approve
have just
it,
maybe we just
a
do a,
virtual one.
I can post another, like just a virtual meeting or something, maybe.
You could do that. I've seen some boards, again, because you're not a quasi judicial board, you've got more flexibility in doing some things. You could circulate a letter, or you could, if you wanted to work on a letter and circulate it and get, by email, get agreement by your board members on the content of the letter, and do it by email, or you could schedule a special meeting if you wanted to consider a letter. You have the ability to do that.
I have a question. Did the consultants meet with any other advisory boards before putting together this PowerPoint?
No, they didn't, no, the consultants didn't meet with other boards or appointed boards or commissions.
Okay.
So here's one thought that, we could all review the strategic plan and circulate individually our comments and feedback to somebody, Chair
Me.
Allison.
Yes.
to consolidate and kind of pull all those together and then I mean my sense is then having kind of a short impromptu virtual meeting would be the
Yep.
best way to, kind of have all that consolidated and maybe pulled together in some form and then, kind of have a time, half an hour for us to sift through that and put together a plan that
Yeah,
we all approve.
I think that'd be great. You said if you had it by the first. Fred, is that what you said? If we could get something,
Yeah, I'm thinking by the beginning of February, because like I said, City Council and Planning Commission is going to be looking at this on the second week of February, on February
Okay.
12th. So it's going to be after that meeting when our consultants will be making any final changes. So for like I said, a potential public hearing in March. So I think if you get something, I think if you get us something by the first week in February, we can still find a way to get something done. And even if you tell me ahead of time, I can give the consultants a heads up. And so it sounds like that, it sounds like that there's some interest in getting Prop 123 incorporated and understanding what's been done by the city for Prop 123 and what putting that on the priority list.
yes. Yes, Glenn.
I'd be certainly in favor of us sharing via email some kind of, text conversation about comments we have. That would be very helpful.
Excellent. And then maybe, I don't know, can people just look at their calendars for like the week of the 3rd? If there'd be any time we could do, I mean, really, if we all did our work ahead of time, it could just be a quick, meeting from like 5:30 to 6 or whatever could work for people. That
I have
week.
I have a suggestion.
Yes,
Um, is there any way that we could all email our bullet points that we'd like to have to you, Allison? You consolidate that, send it to me. I'll write an email. You send it back individually to approve the email. Then we'd have an email ready to go in that meeting, and instead of like hashing it out. Does that make sense? And so we'd have a first draft at that meeting instead of hashing out a first draft. So does that make sense?
yeah, that makes sense. So having everyone review the plan, send me their comments. I write it out, send it to you, Amy, right?
Well, or you'll consolidate because we can't email each other. So we'll all email our things to Allison. Allison, you'll consolidate a list, send it back to me. I'll write something up. And then when we meet, we have this document that's pre-written that we can add or subtract instead of trying to write a document in 30 minutes with all of our ideas.
Got it. That works. That's a great plan.
Yeah, I like it. Could we meet in the evening, Monday, February 3rd?
I'm available.
Is on there. I have an evening meeting, so yeah, I couldn't actually meet on the 3rd.
The 4th?
Let's see. I could do it. I couldn't do 5:30, but I could do like a 6:30. I don't know if that's too late for people.
I can do 6:30.
Sure, that's fine.
It's for 30 minutes.
Just if we stuck
Yeah,
it
and
to 30
virtual.
minutes, virtual.
Mhm.
All
So,
right.
Amy, I was confused why we couldn't have cross conversation in the email. Why it all has.
So it's a
Okay.
law called the Sunshine Law. You can Google it, but we're not allowed to speak. It's considered because this is a public forum, we have to have our conversations held publicly, so we can only talk in groups of 2.
About HAB business matters.
I see.
Those are things, I think I might have sent you and Rebecca a few things, but now that we'll have a third new HAB member, we'll have a little more training on that, but yes. We're not allowed to yeah, that's sort of what we were talking about with like the Google Doc and having a place to like collaborate without breaking rules. So for now, let's plan as mentioned, and then we'll do 30 minutes at from 6:30 to 7 on February 4th to like finalize it. And then I can get it to you, Fred.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah, you have to post it by the 31st, the Friday before, I think. Do we need 48 hours?
No, 24 hours. You have to post, you're required to post the agenda 24
Okay.
hours before your meeting.
Right. I don't think we have any old business. I think probably we've all shared our reports. You guys have shared enough reports. So I think we're good. We're good to adjourn. It's I think 7:15-ish, not quite yet. 7:12. All right, everyone. Thank you for your time and support. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye, Amy. Thank you, Glenn.
Bye.